The following is an interview with the nationally known contemporary gospel artist Edwin Hawkins. This interview takes place at the home of Mr. Hawkins, located in Oakland Hills, on March the 8th, 1984, at 3 o'clock p.m. So what I'm hoping to do is come up with some type of definition or outlook as a result of this on field. Okay. So, okay, what is your opinion? I mean, what in your opinion is contemporary soul gospel music?
Contemporary music, I think, well, the word contemporary, I've never really looked up the definition of it, but I think in terms of music, I think what it generally means is that it is music, the music itself is relative to what's happening today in the music business.
Okay. How does this differ? How does the style of music today differ, gospel music, than it did back during the days of Thomas Dorsey?
How does it differ?
Yeah, musically, or is the message the same?
The message of the gospel is basically the same in that it is always relative. The message is always relative. But the difference in the music, I think, in the Thomas Dorsey days, and just to listen to some of the history of Thomas Dorsey himself, the gospel musician you're talking about, Thomas Dorsey. His music sort of evolved from the early American black music, such as the blues and that kind of thing, R&B music. And because I remember in his day, he talked about, because I've met him and he's been to our convention, we've done some sharing together.
Okay.
He's talked about his being criticized as gospel music because he brought in some of the sounds from
the secular world,
you know, such as the blues and I guess some light jazz. He wasn't extremely jazzy, but bluesy, I guess you could.
Well, probably at that time.
At that time, to those people, that was very contemporary. They didn't use the word then; they just used the word that it was jazzy or bluesy or worldly.
Yeah.
So I think the difference being now that it's gospel music has taken on the flavor of so many different forms of music, because you can do that. It can have a country flavor, it can have R&B flavor, it can have jazz flavor, it can have a rock flavor, and even ballad flavor, and sometimes classical. You know, so I think the difference is today that it's not so regimented. It's not just in a one kind of flavor. It takes on many different flavors of the music world.
So it's a sort of conglomeration.
Yes, so it's different the difference that I see as to what it was then, that it was it had probably only some kind of blues flavors to it in a Thomas Dorsey day, and was not as intricate as it is now with your jazz chords and the progressive changes and that kind of thing. You know, now that we use the bass and the drums and some orchestration behind the music today. You know, and then your electronic instruments are used a lot in contemporary gospel.
Okay. Okay, in your opinion, is the gospel music a musical style or is it a form? When I say form, I mean like, for instance, opera is a form that never changes. And do you feel that gospel music fits in that category? Because usually styles are something that can change, whereas I have viewed forms as being something that really never change.
Well, I disagree with that because I think forms can change.
Okay.
And, I mean, you can, well, we're talking about music, but I mean, when you look at an object that has a form, that form can be changed.
Okay.
If someone changes it.
Yeah.
It just takes someone or some person to change the form. And just as we were speaking, gospel music has changed its form.
Okay.
And it's changing all the time, just depending on what. And the reason I think that it changes is because you have new musicians coming along who are influenced by those prior to them or before them, and those musicians that come along that have creativity.
Okay.
With their own creativity and the musicians that they've been influenced by, it takes a different form.
Okay.
Because
So
it
you
has
feel
some
that-
form of the older or the people before them, and then what that new artist is creating.
So you feel that there shouldn't really be no distinction between the style and form? It should be called now, it may sound very technical, but for me as a writer, it's sort of real particular to know.
Style and form.
See, I brought this question with the professor, and I asked the question. He raised the same question to me, and I said, well, I've never really thought about it. I always just figured it was a form of music. But then, when I was looking at the history of opera and the classical orchestra, you can see where its form stopped at one point and went to another form. In other words, okay, they had the Baroque orchestra, they had the classical orchestra, the Romantic orchestra, but all of those different orchestras had their own formalized structure. And 90 out of 100%, it didn't change. It sort of stopped there. You know what I'm trying to say? So that's what I'm trying to.
Well, I guess you could say gospel has a form. Now, when put to think about it a little bit more seriously or a little bit more in depth, I guess the form has to do with the kind of music it is.
Okay.
And the kind of music that it is because of the message.
Okay.
Okay. So the form in that sense, it doesn't change because of the message, it being gospel.
Okay.
Okay. So in that sense, it does not change. But the style of it.
So
Maybe I'm kind of contradicting what I've said just prior. So there is a certain style that can and has changed.
Okay. So it's like saying that the spiritual meaning in the music, making up a form, does not change, but the way in which that message is brought about.
Okay. Now, when I said a few minutes ago that the form can change, and I still believe that. I still believe that. And the reason I believe that is because we're learning more and more about Christ every day.
Yeah.
And some of the teachings that we learned like 25 years ago, or either some of the people learned about 50 years ago, some of those ideas and some of those doctrinal views are changing, because we understand a little bit better today than we understood maybe 25 or 50 years ago about the teachings of Christ. Okay. And, so I guess the form and style can change.
Okay, all right.
Okay?
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, it sort of makes sense.
Maybe we need to just recap form. And the reason I think that, the form of it is because it is gospel music, and the message is the gospel of Jesus Christ. Right. And Jesus Christ does not change.
Right.
The Bible said he's the same today, yesterday, and forevermore. But what causes the form of that to change is your understanding, developing a relationship with Christ will cause the form to change. Because, you might say that you might sing something about what you understand today about Christ, and maybe 5 minutes later or tomorrow or 2 weeks later or 10 years later, you understand it differently.
Okay.
So you have a different opinion about that same Jesus Christ.
Okay.
Because you understand him better.
Right.
So the form can change. Okay. But so that's different from style.
But to me it sounds like you're saying there are two forms, and there's I'm not saying two forms in the sense that that's what you said. That's what you said. But I'm saying that my understanding seems as though there's okay. You said the message of Jesus Christ. It does not change, but your understanding.
No, I said Jesus Christ himself does not change.
Okay.
I mean, the Bible and the Word of God tells us that He's the same today, yesterday, and forevermore. But our understanding does change.
Oh, okay.
To give you a good example, there are certain things that I learned as a child that I was taught in Christianity, in our religion, that you could not do. And to give you an example, we were taught that it was very wrong to go to the movie. It was wrong to listen to so-called worldly music. It was wrong to for the women to wear makeup, you know. And that was what we learned through Christianity. And Christianity comes from Christ. That's where they get the word Christianity from. But we learned later on that those things are not necessarily wrong within themselves. It's just that we learn to do whatever we do in moderation. It is not necessarily a sin. I mean, lipstick itself can't be a sin because it doesn't know how to sin. You know, a cigarette can't sin. What we do with it can become a sin when it becomes harmful to the body. So that's what I mean. So He does not change. It's just that we learn better how to apply the principles of Christ to our lives. So He doesn't change. It's just that our views, so then our form of thinking does change. So, you know, just as a writer, a gospel writer, if he writes from his little understanding, you know, it's very regimented, very narrow-minded. But if as he develops a relationship with Christ, later on when he writes, people can see that his understanding has blossomed, has bloomed, and you know, you.
Do you feel that your music has sort of undergone change since you started recording Real Famous earlier when you were doing On Happy Day and things like that?
Well, I don't think the music or the message has changed that much in my music.
Maybe I should restate that. Not the message, but I'm saying, do you feel that the music itself? When I say the music, I mean the way in which you go about delivering the message.
Oh, definitely.
Okay.
Yes, definitely.
How do you yourself deal with the various styles of gospel music? When I say various styles, now I was raised myself in a Pentecostal church, and I noticed that usually in Pentecostal churches and Baptist churches and Methodist churches, the congregations usually accept certain styles of things. And I guess to give an example, the church that I was raised in is called St. James Holiness Temple, and we were not the style of music that we did till I got 17, 18 years old was basically all fast, nothing slow, nothing around the nature of God is or God has smiled on me or something of that nature. And so what I'm trying to ask is, how do you yourself deal with the various styles in relations to religion, religious faith? Okay, Baptist, Methodist.
As to the kinds of music the different denominations allow in their services.
How do you deal with it as far as performing wise, or?
Well, I don't really deal with. You mean? Are you speaking in terms of what if I'm going into a Baptist setting or a Methodist setting, as to what kind of music I'll perform to them? I guess there's little concern. There is little concern on my part. If I know, for instance, I did a concert in Tampa, Florida, at a Presbyterian church a few weeks ago with an orchestra. And I was told by one of the people that picked me up from the airport that you got to be careful how high you raise your hands because it'll frighten the people, you know, if you praise them too much. And it did kind of psych me a little bit. And as I went on, you know, the second portion of the concert, I forgot about that. And I just said, well, listen, I got to be myself. You know, my relationship between me and God is a very personal thing, and I have to be me as I feel it. And I'm not a really extremely emotional person in terms of that kind of thing, but I am not ashamed of my relationship with the Lord. I don't care where I am. I want people to know if I'm sharing and if I'm ministering the gospel, I want them to know where I'm coming from and what I feel about God. And I can't be put into a bag and say that you can only do this or only do that. So I don't really concern myself that much with the kind of music that they're used to hearing. Because I don't. When I write what I write. When I perform what I've written.
So, do you like to be categorized as a contemporary gospel artist, or
it
do you,
doesn't really matter.
or do you feel? I don't personally feel. Now, maybe I'm wrong. I guess I won't say this, but do you feel that there is such thing as white gospel and black gospel?
Yes, there is. There is that, and it's something that we don't need to be ashamed of or shy away from or flinch when we're talking to a white brother or a black brother or the different races about the kind of music, because that's just the way God made us.
Yeah.
There's some black, there's some white, there's some Chinese, Italian, whatever, and I think that we should deal with it head on, not from the point of being better or indifferent or a lesser kind of music, but now, the way we define it sort of with, when we categorize it in the Grammy Award situation or the Dove Award situation, they call it inspirational music and they call it soul music. And we sort of know, because of the way they categorize it, that if it's called inspirational, it's white gospel.
Yeah.
If it's called soul, then it's black gospel.
Okay.
And there has to be a distinction because the heritage makes it so.
Okay.
The heritage makes it that way.
But do you feel that with that? I just had a problem because I always felt that maybe my readings were not in depth enough. But from the research that I've done, I've always felt that I always felt that it was sort of taking away from the black culture, because from me looking at books, I always the type of gospel music that black musicians did and the types that the whites did was so completely different. I've always thought of gospel. I've always thought of gospel music in the sense, when a person said gospel, I automatically thought of black. I never really thought.
Well, no, you know why gospel music is gospel? It's not the music. It's not the 3-chord changes or because it sounds like a hymn. What makes gospel music gospel is because it contains something about a relationship with Jesus Christ. That's the only thing that makes it gospel music.
Okay, so with that, you feel a pop artist can sing a gospel song?
Of course. With pop music and rock music, as long as they're singing about Jesus Christ or your relationship with Him or something that has to do with Jesus Christ.
And I just have one or two more questions, and Okay, very briefly, could you tell me how you sort of got started in the field professionally?
Mm-hmm. I don't know if you have enough for that.
Oh, let me see.
What do you got on the other side? I started in gospel music was just really, to me, a freak accident, but to God it was a miracle because He performed it. It was just, we had the Northern California State Youth Choir, which later became a community choir, so to speak, and that we decided to stay together after performing in Washington, D.C. at the Youth Congress of our church organization. So staying together, we decided we would do an album at our church. And this was done at Ephesian Church of God in Christ in Berkeley, where E. Cleveland is a pastor. And we were going to hand sell that ourselves among the choir members and give the contributions back to the church. We did it on a 2-track machine, a home machine brought to the church, and at the warehouse where our albums were being shipped to us, it had a stop at this warehouse, and this one guy that worked there, I can't remember his name or who he is, I don't think I've ever met him to this day. He took the album to a rock station, KSAN, which was an underground rock station then. And that particular cut he liked. He played the album, and he liked Oh Happy Day, and he played it. No, he got it played. He got the DJ to like it, and he played it on his underground rock station. And it hit on that station. And it made a lot of noise out here in San Francisco. And then it got word in New York, and DJs there picked it up on rock stations again. And then it became R&B on the black stations. But it hit first on the white rock stations. And that's how I got it. From that point, it made such a noise, being that it was a gospel thing. We had about 16 or more major companies call us to see if we were interested in a contract.
Now, was that around the same time as the Voices of Christ did Fill My Cup?
No, they did that much later.
That was later.
They did that later.
Okay. So do you feel that Oh Happy Day was a major inspiration in the things that are happening in the gospel community today in this Bay Area?
Yes. you know, if I can modestly state that, I think that not only in the Bay Area, but I think because of what happened around the country with that song, it caused a new awakening for gospel music, and musicians that wanted to do things, wanted to be daring, and were just really kind of afraid to be daring. So they started to create new, different kinds of sounds, things that were inside of them all the time. You know, I wasn't the only one that had the ideas. It just so happened I was the one that had the opportunity to do a record, and it hit.
So was it unusual for your church to accept Oh Happy Day at that time?
Oh yeah, we got a lot of criticisms, and it only came from the church. You know, just to show you how Christian people repeat themselves over and over because they want to allow their minds to be open and to allow themselves to receive what else there is for us to do, and other kind of ministries for us to do. You know, we sit back and we criticize each other instead of really helping to further that ministry. We criticize each other, and that's what they did with that. We got calls from ministers from around the country trying to get it off the radio. You know, we spent our time singing the gospel on Sunday morning to each other. You know, what about singing the gospel to the world? You know, where that was our command, go into the world, not go into the church buildings, but go into the world. And that's what we do. Every Sunday we sing to each other. We testify to each other. You know, we don't testify to the world. And but I mean, you know, you can ask me all that, but that's how it all happened.
No, I'm glad. I mean, more. I just don't want to keep. I don't want to keep you too long. It's just one more brief question. It should take no more than a minute or so. What direction do you feel the gospel music is taking today, or will take in the future?
It's kind of hard to predict what was going to happen with gospel in the future. I think that you have like your major companies who are very interested in doing labels, and some of them have tried it and have failed because they don't really know how to market gospel. Now you got your gospel labels and some gospel companies who do okay, but we're reaching very few people in comparison to what the majors are reaching with their labels and just reaching, you know, the masses. We're not reaching the masses, and I think until those major labels call in expertise, people that have expertise in reaching even the gospel market, you know, because we miss a lot of the gospel market, and people that would listen and come to gospel concerts, that would buy gospel albums, we miss a lot of them. You know, they know how to reach the secular market because that's their expertise, but they need to bring in people that can specialize in the gospel market. You know, so I think that is going to happen. You know, that we'll start to do better productions. We'll start to do video things, such as, you know, the secular market is doing. Because I think we should get involved in all of it because of the message that we have to offer to the world. You know, some people think that we should not get into video, some church people again. You know, but we should do whatever door is open. I think we need to take advantage of it and take the message there.
Do you feel that it would take an academic setting eventually? When I say academic, do you think it would be accepted more in universities, more than a part of a Black history course, but being accepted into a major music program?
Gospel music?
Yes.
Yes, at some point. Yeah, because there are several, many of your colleges now have Black gospel choirs. They're teaching what is called maybe black music, I guess some of them teach. And in Black music, they have to talk about gospel. You know, and at some point, you know, the further we get involved in Black gospel, we can understand that is really where, you know, the American music is based upon. You know, it came over with the slaves and was spirituals, and then the gospels, and then the blues and all that stuff developed. You know.
Well, I think this will conclude our interview.
Hold on one.
And I want to personally thank you for it.
Okay.
And this has been great help to me.
My pleasure.